because just to make sure there is establishing a causation chain. So sometimes when you look at the problem, you might say this might be just the problem, but there are a lot of other things that is also a part of the same transaction. So that is what section 6 says, right? So relevancy of facts forming the part of the same transaction. That means the same act. Sometimes this act can be 1 second, 2 seconds, and sometimes it can be for days, right? So we never know. When it comes to computer crime, it can be for days, right? So if you look, so this is a very old ordinance, so obviously you will not see computer related jargon, but you should be able to apply this to that, right? Then you have the second one. You will see another example. A is accused of waging a war against the republic by taking a part. So now you can relate this to how computers work. This has a very interesting point. A is accused of waging war against the republic by taking part in an armed insurrection in which property is destroyed, troops are attacked, and jails are broken open. So that means this is the old school thing, no? The Allang innawa, Allang gahama, eකට විරුද්ධව කැරලක් ගහලා ඒ කතාවට කියන්නේ, right? The occurrence of these facts is relevant as forming a part of the general transaction, though A may not have been present at all of them. So that means someone might do something, right? A might not be there in all the acts, right? But A can be in one such act, or being associated with such acts is also makes him accusation is liable for that particular fact in issue. Is the idea clear? Jailbreak කරන්න උදව් කරත් එකයි ඒ transaction එකේ කොටක හිටියත් එකයි. අර ඒකට දැන් කොරණ crime back කරාම රටේ තියෙන ඔක්කොම අයවල්ලා කියන්නේ board which check කරයි, car transport කරපු එක කරයි, ඊට පස්සේ කන්න දීපු එක කරයි, අදුම් මාරු කරන දීපු එක කරයි, ඔක්කොම අල්ලන්නේ for this particular clause, right? So you have the fact in issue, you have fact in issue is you doing something bad, and things leading up to it, things leading after it, right? Which is also considered as the same transaction. So that means you shoot someone from the point of acquiring the weapon and from the point of disposing the weapon becomes a part of the same transaction. Is that idea clear? So it can be considered as you hack into a system from the point to make preparation for hacking, during the hack and after the hack, all becomes a part of the same transaction. So you can have the Computer Crimes Act that we discussed previously. That is about what is a computer crime, right? This is about evidence. So that means whenever you go eventually and litigate against a computer crime, you have to conform to this 5, 6 and 7, right? So this that is why we are teaching you this, right? So you understand what is the fact as well as what are the things that are related to the facts, right? So then C and D are not relevant to our discussion, right? Then we come to number 7, facts which are the occasion, cause or effect, immediate or otherwise, of relevant fact or fact in issue, or which constitute the state of things under which they have happened, or which afforded an opportunity for their occurrence or transactions are relevant. So this is quite difficult to understand what this thing says, right? So let's look at what this thing means through the illustrations. The question is whether person A robbed person B. So the fact that shortly before the robbery, B went to a fair with money in his possession and that he showed it or mentioned the fact that he had it to third persons are relevant. So that means that if I am committing a robbery, I should know that you should have that particular item, right? So in that case, if you are speaking to those, you two are speaking and I overheard over here. I hear that you have the money. You speak in that is relevant in this case because then only I know you are having this and I have afforded the opportunity to do that, right? The question is whether A murdered B. Marks on the ground produced by a struggle at or near the place where the murder was committed are relevant facts. That is quite clear. Any blood evidence, any scratch marks or anything are part of that. That is what you mean by this section. Question whether A poisoned B. The state of B's health before the symptoms ascribed to poison and habits of B known to A, which afforded an opportunity for the administration of the poison. So this is a very common thing, right? So if you are going to do something bad to someone, right, this is the first thing they catch. I told you last week as well, right? So more random you are, more better you are, right? More and more bad. But unfortunately, human beings are creatures of patterns, right? We all have patterns. From the way you walk, from the way you get into the bus or your vehicle, from the way you drive, you have a pattern, right? But the easiest way to integrate with you is to go through that pattern. Otherwise, you are going to get rejected, right? So mostly the exploitations do come from what? Observing of patterns, and mostly through a close person. So that is what this means, right? So the state of B cells before the symptoms ascribed to poison and the habits of B known to A. So that means I know B likes this. So if B likes this, I'm going to put poison in that. I will rather have that. Is the idea clear? So let's assume I know some person is deathly allergic to some particular thing, right? If I want to do something bad, that's a very easy target after that. I can put anything and I can pay 500 rupees to some of these servers in the shop and they will happily do that, right? People think they don't, people do that. And people think that person might not necessarily need to know whether he is doing a harm or not. I am pulling a prank on someone and therefore put this into the dish and then I'll get paid or something. So he'll pay you 5,000 rupees, he'll put it and that person will die. So this is exactly the same thing which happened in the airport incident in Kuala Lumpur, where one person from the North Korean government was actually killed using for spray, right? None of you know that? So read about it, right? In that where there was a North Korean hierarchy is there, so this is like the third person in the hierarchy. That means he's way above, but the person who is currently in this Kim Jong-un wants to consolidate power. So in order to stop competition, he has that person eliminated. How did he eliminate that person? Through a certain neurotoxin sent through the ear. That's how it works, right? So it's not that hard, by the way. All class A drugs are good enough to do that, right? If you know how. All cocaine, heroin, all of these gets absorbed through skin, right? And if you have the proper solution, it will do its job, right? So what happened was North Koreans hired a set of two Chinese women or two immigrant women who are Indonesian, I guess, who are in Kuala Lumpur at that day. And what they said was, we are making a prank game, right? So you can press this into the ear of that person. And we are doing some reality show or something. So that woman went and sprayed it. That fellow lasted about 10 minutes after that, right? So that is basically habits, patterns known. He knows that person is at the airport, this fellow is going at this plane. All of these are known, right? So if you look at what most of these things, unless someone ingests poison by accident, poison and those kind of things, especially if it's like your account has been hacked by someone, your personal information has been taken by someone, it can also be from internal sources. Mostly it's internal, right? Mostly it's a rogue employee, right, who has access to the system. So within the system that does this, because this part, habits of B or way we behave. So let's assume I have a tendency to open this laptop and go. So who knows this? The person who's in this class. Now you should know how to exploit this. So those are things that we would generally consider after 7, right? So from here on it changes. So for you guys, you need to know 5, 6 and 7 when you are collecting evidences and when you are looking at a scene. So most people, what they do is, when they look at a scene, they look, okay, that is the thing, that is the evidence. They don't necessarily think of before, after, right? And also what enabled this. So sometimes you might have to think these things. So for example, if it's an unauthorized access thing, now you cannot necessarily understand how this unauthorized access happened, how the elevation of permissions went in our scenario on the very first scenario. So if you look at that, then the next consideration should be social engineering, right? Any sub patterns. So you have to keep an eye for these things under 7, right? So whether there are opportunities, knowledge and things like that, which is also part of the vaccination, which cause the vaccination. Facts which are the occasion, cause or effect of vaccination, right? So for you guys, you need to know 5, 6 and 7, right? So apart from that, other parts are also relevant, but mainly for investigation purposes, 5, 6 and 7 is very much important, right? So for this, you should actually take these 2 pages as a printout for your exam, right? Only 5, 6 and 7, don't print this entire thing, useless, right? This page, right? Page 2 and page 3 as a printout. There will be a question on this. So the question would be applicability of 5, 6 and 7 on what? On computer crimes and cybercrime. So there will be a cybercrime scenario and you will have to apply 5, 6 and 7 to that. That will be a question. So I am telling the question in advance, be prepared and come, right? So take these 2 pages. I don't want you to memorize this. Are we okay? Alright, so then let's move on to this Online Safety Act. So I decided I am not going to discuss PDPA because PDPA I am going to give an assignment. So the assignment is, I have given you one assignment. This will be the second assignment, submittable after the exams, right? So 2-page document. Don't need to be under special provision. Just you need to do the 45-day story. That's all. That's the thing you can remember, right? I'm not going to ask lawyer right? So and also the tampering part, that is common sense basically, right? So there will be the second assignment, maximum 2 to 3 page write up comparing PDPA to GDPR, right? So that is basically your second assignment. You will have to submit it 1 week after your last exam has finished, right? So assignment would be best one out of the 2. So I have already given a written one. So this one would be the second. Best one out of the 2 would be your assignment. So why I did this? Because you all did not know how to answer these kind of questions in the first place, and therefore your writing of that answers are not properly done. So marks would not be generally getting good when it comes to that kind of write-ups. So therefore you will have to look at doing this assignment properly. I need a analysis on GDPR and PDPA. That's all, right? You will look, when you read both the things, you will see both the things are almost the same, right? So you can look at that, read it. I am not going to question PDPA on an exam, right? So PDPA is fine to assignment. So I will tell you what's going to be in the exam. Computer Crimes Act is going to be in the exam. ETA is going to be in the exam. So you have to take those 2 things fully, right? Including the amendment for ETA, right? And then these 2 pages of the evidence ordinance, and then this one, Online Safety Act. That's all, right? Questions I might not necessarily question anything from the evidence special provision, but only thing I expect you to know is there is a 45-day period, as well as there is certain form for evidence. That is like when you take evidence which is not tampered with, you can't produce it, those kind of things has to be there. So I don't expect you to take evidence special provisions. Those are the 4 things I want. Again, Computer Crimes, Electronic Transactions Act and its amendment, 2 pages of evidence ordinance and Online Safety Bill. Right? This one also I'll tell you the sections, right? You don't have to print this 60 pages, right? So I'll discuss this today, and then we'll stick to those sections. I only want section 2, 11 to 18, 28 to 30. That's all. All the other things are not necessary. If you want to print it 60 pages, I am okay with it, but section 2 for the definitions, 11 to 20 we will talk about the crimes, and then we will have 28 to 30. Just give me a second. Okay, so this one I made a mistake, section 52 or not 2, right? I will discuss 2 as well, 2, 52, 12 to 23, that's what we will be interested in, right? 12 to 23. You can say 11 to 23 as well. No, 23 is not. So then let's look at this particular set. We'll quickly go through this. So if you look at section 2 here, it talks about to which people this act actually applies. So it's very important for us to understand when we take an act, to which people or which group of people does this act bring. Easiest student of yours. Yeah, easiest student in this class. Okay, so it's important to discuss what applies for where this act actually to which person this act actually applies. So it's a very important thing to start with any act, to which category of people does it apply. So for example, there are acts for temples and things, right? And there are acts for forces people, those kind of things do not apply to us, right? So the first thing you have to remember is to which segment of people does this act apply. So let's see under these three. So if you can remember, Computer Crimes Act also starts very similarly, right? A person commits an offence under this act in respect of a citizen of Sri Lanka while being present in Sri Lanka or outside Sri Lanka. So now what does that mean? Person commits an offence under this act in respect of citizens of Sri Lanka while being present in Sri Lanka or outside Sri Lanka. So that means you are doing something against me, right? Act is a citizen of Sri Lanka, right? So the word is very important, right? There's a difference between a person and a citizen. If you go to your constitution, right? If you go to Sri Lanka's constitution, read chapter 3, which is our fundamental rights, it will see that some of the sections are for any person, that means anyone who is in this country, right? Including foreigners. And some of them are for any citizen. Citizen means naturalized citizens of this country. So that means who are by birthright or by naturalization who are citizens of this country. So in this case, act is in respect of citizen of Sri Lanka. That means we have to be a citizen of Sri Lanka for this act to apply, and if something has to be done against me or to me, right, while being present in Sri Lanka or outside Sri Lanka. A person commits an offence under this act in respect of a Sri Lanka, citizen of Sri Lanka while being present in Sri Lanka or outside Sri Lanka. What do you mean by this? Not in between, not prolonged, right? So this is the same wording that you see in the Computer Crimes Act. Foreigner can apply when? So foreigner is not necessarily a Sri Lankan citizen, right? Lanka is guilty of crime, right? A person commits an offence under this act respect of a citizen of Sri Lanka. So we are only looking at our side, not necessarily. Right? So a loss or damage or harm is caused within or outside Sri Lanka by the commission of an offence under this act to the state or to a person resident in Sri Lanka. Now your thing comes under that, right? So an offence under this act, wherever committed, is committed by a person who is a citizen of Sri Lanka. That means America you will be under this particular act. So most of the people who are doing these things are not in Sri Lanka. All these people who are doing very ridiculous Facebook posts, social media posts, polarizing posts, if you look at them, none of them are in Sri Lanka, right? So what happens? All of these people pay them to do whatever they want to do, right? And we think they are telling the truth. They are having a very nice life in some other countries, right? So I'll tell you a very good example, right? There is a friend of mine who is a student of UCSC at some time, long time ago, right? Who is having a great life in some other country. You see every 3 minutes there is a post from him saying this is great, the government is great, everything is. But there are a lot of following for him as well. People think that he is also in Sri Lanka doing this, but no one necessarily knows that he is not in Sri Lanka. He has not even said where he is from, right? But all of us who knows him knows he is not in Sri Lanka, nowhere close to Sri Lanka as well. But that is how most. So this is basically to capture that part. But there are also nuances for this. That මේක කරොත් එහෙම ඕන එකක් මේක ඇතුලේ දාලා ගහන්න පුළුවන්ද කියන එක ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා, right? So more laws will also create more problems, Aripata. So then let's move on to the objectives. I want you to read through this, right? So this one I am not going to look at, but is the establishment of Online Safety Commission. This is not necessarily important for us, how to members are appointed, and disqualifications and stuff. So powers and function of the commissions are also not necessarily important. right? So you are at the investigative level, no? But powers can be important because why? Then you should know what the commission can actually do, right? So, so you can read through this. This is very plain reading, right? So let's go to section 12. Okay. Prohibition of online communication of false statements. Any person, whether in or outside Sri Lanka, who poses a threat to national security, public health or public order, or promote feelings of ill will and hostility between different classes of people by communicating false statements, commits an offence and shall on conviction be liable to imprisonment not exceeding 5 years or a fine of 500,000 rupees. Right? So, what does this mean? By looking at this sentence, to which category does it fit? False propaganda, basically, right? So it says, who possesses a threat to national security, public health or public order, or promotes feeling of ill will and hostility between different classes of people by communicating false statements. So now, all the WhatsApp messages and things comes under this category. Now, for example, Sri Lanka had certain clashes between ethnicities, right? So now, for example, there was an incident which happened in Digana, which almost propagated to the entire country, right? So, and there's something which happened in Darga town, it also went all over the place, right? So some of the things that were there are not necessarily true. Some of the things there are just outright made up just to sensationalize things. So therefore these things, if they can be convicted against this. So but the problem is this. So now so let's assume a politician saying something. Obviously we know 99% of the time politicians sensationalize things, right? Ground reality is this, what he says is this, what he promises is this, and what he eventually achieves is that, right? So that is what general things were. So would they be liable under this? What do you think? The TV communication, no, mass communication. So you are doing a Facebook live, right? Saying some inflammatory things. Can he be tried here? Theoretically, he should be, right? But whether it's being tried or not is a different story. And a lot of people talk about promote feelings of ill will and hostility. So, where is the line? Where is the line that you would say ill will or hostility? So, different people have different bars, right? So, there's a recent incident which I got to know that one person, a lady, has actually accused another person of karadayak kara for just looking at her. Right? So when one was walking like this, the other person was coming from that side like this. I saw the video as well. He just looked at her like that and went. So that now, according to that lady, it's a karadayak kara to her. So there are a lot of interesting boundaries there, right? So for her that might be the threshold. For me it might not be the threshold. So then we come have this sadharana miniyake threshold. So that is a very difficult place to get. So do you understand the problems with wordings, right? So now Sri Lanka is also getting there, right? Sri Lanka is also getting into this victimhood story, right? Do something, get some evidence, appear as the victim, and then try to rake in money. There are people who do that, right? There are people who are well known in certain businesses. Married couple, husband goes with someone, wife goes with someone, and then they make sure they create the videos and rakes in all the other person's assets and everything by blackmailing or whatever, right? So there are a lot of things like that. Sri Lanka is getting there, right? So be careful on those kind of things, right? And what you mean by promotes feeling is a standard test. What is the standard test that has to be decided? By whom? By the courts that of this country, right? So then let's go to section 13. Any person, whether in or outside Sri Lanka, who communicates a false statement by way of an online account or through an online document. Earlier was just communication, right? With amounts to contempt of court in the opinion of any court which exercises a special jurisdiction to punish an offence of contempt of court, right? So, what is this about? You say something bad against the court or just challenges the decision or says that Okkama Boru Karan. There was a very famous case like that, no? Where Rajan Ramanaka said something and it was considered as contempt of court, right? So this is what is this about, right? So this is common these days because most people do not necessarily know that that you can't actually do this, right? When you get a certain judgment, people generally scold the court in public media, right? And no one takes it to court and say, but if someone actually wants to do that, he has enough and more things to do that. So now have you seen that when people give their own opinions on Facebook, some people, first thing what they do is, it's their individual opinion. First thing the people in the online environment do is do what? Go to their place of work and say this person is like that, you should not have, and pressurize that person's job. That is the thing that is up and coming in Sri Lanka, right? So there are things. I saw a video where, not a video, saw a certain video where they have created, one person has made the comment and this person has then, someone has taken the picture of that comment and I can't remember the company, has tagged the company as, do you encourage this kind of opinions and everything, and that person ended up being fired by the company. So those kind of things are quite interesting to see where it lands here, right? So why is it important for us? Because eventually we will be the people who are trying to find evidence for this, right? So any person, whether in or outside Sri Lanka, who maliciously or wantonly by way of wantonly by way of online account or through an online location by communicating a false statement, gives provocation for any person or incites any person intending or knowingly, it will be likely that such provocation or incitement will cause the offence of rioting to be committed, shall, if the rioting be committed in consequence of such provocation, be liable for one thing, right? If offence of rioting be not committed, be liable for imposition of another thing. So there are two things here, right? In the first case, what does it say? If a person knowingly would trigger someone, right, which would eventually get to a late of a riot, right? If the riot was committed, this section applies. If the riot was not committed, this section applies, right? So that is, these are very straightforward things. Any person, whether in or out of Sri Lanka, who by communicating a false statement voluntarily causes disturbance of birth to any assembly lawful engaged in the performance of religious worship or whatever, that is what we are seeing these days, right? And then, can you all tell me, when you look at this, there is a third common word that we use, right? What is the common word that we use? Communication, but according to the communication, there is also one part of the communication that false statement. So now, if you look at this, let's try to see whether this false statement is actually, just give me a second. Okay, so if you do not know where to find the definition of it, where do we find it? In the definition section of the Act, right? So in this case, false statement means statement that is known or believed by its maker to be incorrect or untrue and is made specially with intent to deceive or mislead, but does not include a caution, an opinion or imputation made in good faith. What can be improved in that definition? So this is section 52, the definitions. So we were talking about saying something false either online or by through communication mechanisms. So when you talk about online false statements, you should know what a false statement is, right? So the false statement is basically this, means a statement that is known or believed by its maker to be incorrect or untrue and is made especially with the intent to deceive or mislead, but does not include a caution. So now tell me how this can be challenged. How can this point be challenged? There's a nice word here which you can challenge. Believed by the maker. So that means if I am putting something out, I know this is incorrect, I know this is untrue, and I am just doing this to make sure that you guys fight. So now I can always say I didn't know it is untrue, I didn't know it is incorrect. So then when this happens, what is the thing? You need to have evidence to back up. No, you are lying, you knew this is a false statement. So that is where all your fact is what? Making of the false statement. Before the fact means there should be some communication how to make the statement or speaking with relevant people who are attached to creating violence or whatever. Then you do the statement. Then his behavior after the statement. 5, 6 and 7. Right? That will make sure you can say, okay, according to what we have in fact in issue, things relevant to fact in issue, and also things that are enabling that, section 7, will make sure that no, you had very well idea this is a false statement and it is incorrect and untrue and you did it too just to mislead people. So here, who has to prove it? The person who was accusing some other person of doing it, right? So the wording is very important here. So there are no tests as per this act still to say what is the test for false statement, but as more litigations come into play, the courts will actually come up with tests to say this is how you assess a false statement, right? Until then, this is what the definition is. Okay. So then let's go back to our section 18. Right? So then, any person, whether in or outside Sri Lanka, who by means of an online account cheats by pretending to be some other person, knowingly substituting one person for another, or repeating that such person or any other person is a person other than the person really is. Right? So this is basically impersonation. So I am not going to look at the offence, we are not looking at the offence, right? Any person, whether in or outside Sri Lanka, who communicates any false statement with the intent to cause any officer or someone to commit an offence against the state, that means asking the forces to do something against, will get into this offence, right? And then we come to 20. Any person, whether in or outside Sri Lanka, who willfully makes or communicates a statement with intention to cause harassment to another person by publishing any private information of that target person or related person of the target person, as a result, cause the target person or any other person harassment, commit an offence. So now, can you tell me an example for this? Very common these days. What? Tell me an example for this 20. Huh? Videos. So let's assume there are two types, right? So now when you are reading PDPA also compare this. So let's assume two people made a sex video. Let's start with that. So now when they are a couple, they made a sex video. Now they are not a couple. They are very case. So then the other party is saying, if you don't give me money, I am going to publish this. So in that case, do you fall under this? The video is offline, right? Taken by a camera with both parties' consent. So any person, whether in or outside Sri Lanka, who willfully makes or communicates a statement with intention to cause harassment to another person by publishing, intent to cause harassment. So saying I am going to publish comes under 20 subsection 1, not necessarily publishing itself. No, intention to publish. So the problem is, intention to publish is a big problem, right? Because once you publish, the damage is done. But when you take all of these blackmail attempts, you never publish. So what they do is, that is the way that people work, right? Once you get caught to one of these things, there is no way out of it. Unless you take the blow if it goes out, or you do some legal action to stop it. But most people are not going to go and do legal action because they are embarrassed about it. But if you get into something like this, go legal. That's the easiest way to get out of the problem. Whatever the video you may have, right? Because what's going to happen at the end of the day? That person is going to have leverage, and that leverage is going to be lifetime. Right? So that can be a very big problem. So, but then let's take the other consideration. So now, first one we talked about consensual. So only problem is threatening to put it online. So that is a harassment claim, right? It says, with an intention to cause harassment, communicates a statement saying WhatsApp, I am going to put it on online if you don't do it. So that is with an intention to cause harassment to another person. What happens if the recording was not consensually made? So now you have two things. You have non-consensual recording as well as the harassment claim. So when the claim comes, it comes under online safety. So obviously the second claim also I am going to put in there, comes under this. But what happens to the first part? Recording without consent. That goes under PDPA, right? That goes under PDPA, not under this. So PDPA you cannot record without consent, especially material of that nature, right? And by the way, you need to understand that is one of the best methods people has to coerce other people to do this, right? And in Sri Lanka it's very common, right? So private information is very clearly defined, means personal information including any image, audio, video, details that any person may reasonably expect to remain private, but does not include any information that may be evidence of a commission of any other offense, right? So that means if it's an offense, that's a different story. You do a drug deal and that's on the video, that's a different story. That's committing an offense, right? That may be evidence, does not include any information that may be evidence of a commission of any other offense, right? But this is something else. So then your harassment means any act or behavior which has the effect of threatening, alarming or distressing a person or violating person's dignity or creating an intimidating, degrading, hostile, humiliating or offensive environment which has all such effects, right? Because human tendency is what? You do the act first and then think I have to make a career. So most of the what is the power of social media? But power of social media is basically you give the impact first. You give a false statement first. Lot of people believe it. and they act upon it, right? That බලන්නකො statement එකක් හදන්න පුළුවන් නම් හෙට බැංක් වඩාගෙන වටන සල්ලි ටික ඔක්කොම ගන්න කියලා අද ගිහලා wholesale එකේ ATM අදිනවා. හරි? So that is how people are. දැන් petrol වැඩි වෙනවා කිව්වොත් රුපියල් කීයකින් හරි වැඩි වෙනවා ඊට කලින් දාලා දාර පොලිමක් ගහ ගන්නවා මේ හෙට ලොකු saving එකක් කරා. හරි? So that is how people are, right? So nowadays, now the behavior has changed. Now it changes every month, right? But those days when you say petrol is going to go by 2 rupees, there's a massive queue before the petrol shed. Exactly. ඊට අපුච්චලා කිව්වේ කියලා. හරි? ඊට කියලා ගෙදර ගිහලා කියලා මම පෙට්‍රල් ගහගත්තා අලුවට දැන් වැඩි වෙන්න කලින් මාර වාසියක් වුණේ කියලා. හරි? පැය 5ක් විතර අරගෙන තමයි. So that is the human tendency. And what this act basically what points to is that because once it goes out, people generally act and then only they think whether it's correct or not. Good example is that Kotaketana case, right? One person was basically hanged by the media to say he's the person, right? And if that person has a proper attorneys, I think the person should sue, right? And then after some time, DNA reveals it's someone else. So now what could happen to that person whose character is totally destroyed? Now if he goes out to a job or whatever, any person would recognize him, right? Media ke dapat kau tu orang yang pintu orang tu. So that's the reason. So there's something for privacy. Even though you have committed a crime, you have a right for privacy, right? There is nothing called you have to put it in the entire TV set. And you can walk in that's their right, right? Right? So then X and Y are formally in a relationship. This is the exact thing I told you, right? Formally in a relationship which since ended. X writes a post on a social media platform including Y's photograph and the personal mobile number intended to cause harassment to Y by facilitating identification and enabling others to contact Y. Y did not see the post but receives harassed telephone calls and so on and so forth. X is guilty of the offense. So this kind of a thing actually happened, right? I was part of one of those investigations. So the thing is, there is a student. I don't want to say the faculties and stuff and the universities. It's not good, right? So not here, by the way, right? Not UCC, just to keep out of it. So what happened is basically there was a guy and a girl younger to that guy. So what has happened is the guy is a smart fellow who has got into certain faculty of Sri Lanka. And then girl is also trying to get to that faculty of particular Sri Lanka, right? And then what happened was like girl has egged the guy on just to help for tutorials and tuition and ඔක්කොම කරගෙන කොහොමද ආවන කැම්පස් එකට. ආවයි පස්සේ now indifference. දැන් වැඩේ කරගත්ත මොබයිල් එකෙන් ලෙවල් එකට ආවා. හරිද? So what this guy did, not a good thing, he posted the girls' numbers on all these prostitution sites, right? That girl ke phone එක දාපුවා විනාඩියට එනවා කෝල් 15ක් විතර. හරි වදිනවා ඉවරයි. හරි? So now she has complained about harassment. So now tell me what are the facts in issue and also things that are relevant to the facts. You know? Facts in issue is obviously the publication of that thing in the online thing. This is the classic illustration of it, right? So is the egging on relevant? Is the person egging on saying I will do this and that and thing? Is that relevant at this point? What do you think? Not necessarily relevant to the crime, no relevancy, but it is relevant to the entire act. So when you are trying to make a decision or punishment, that has to also be considered. Otherwise, there can be a case where people would be led on. And once the crime happens, other person will be happily saying, oh no, nothing like that happened, right? So if you take US, you should go and watch these videos. In this US, if you sign the birth certificate as the father, you are basically the father, right? But in US, there is an increasing number of cases where the father is not the actual father. You should go and look at paternity fraud in USA. You will find father as a DNA test after 10 years being thinking that is his child, that child is not his, right? So there are things like that. So not there are things that is leading up to that. Now what? Crime is crime. There's no two thoughts about that. But what about the leading up part? Is that relevant? Is that necessary? You need to know that as well. What actually happened? So, because one wrong doesn't make two wrongs doesn't make one right, right? Also, but you have to also consider that. So that particular scenario, we eventually found out there is a different plan and other things just to derail certain people. But there was punishments for both X and Y, right? Because X for publishing that, Y for leading on, and then at the correct time making sure I play the victim card. And also there are other people. Who are the other people? Like people from the unions and stuff. Or virtue signaling, virtue signaling, right? So when you are also investigating, that is a thing that you will have to remember. But some of managers so there are people who does those things, right? So X and Y are forming a relationship which has since ended. X posts a photograph of Y in the position of X, which Y could reasonably have expected to remain private. X is guilty of an offence under this section in relation to such post, right? So this is child abuse. I'm not going to talk about that, right? You can't put child pornography or anything of that nature, right? And then we come to 22. Making or altering bots to commit an offence. So any person, whether in or outside Sri Lanka, who makes or alters a bot with the intention of communicating or enabling any other person to communicate by means of a bot, a statement which constitutes an offence under this Act, commits an offence and shall on conviction be liable to imprisonment. So this means you are changing a bot and the bot enables someone to do something else. So the question now comes, if it is fully autonomous, who is liable? So now we are talking about AI now. AI is fully autonomous. So AI creates a bot. AI learns from data, right? If AI learns from data and exhort a person to do something, seemingly feeling it is the correct action to do, who is liable in that case? The person or the AI? Person for basically going through it without thinking. But can you take action against AI? Software developer, the person who had the system, we technically don't know, because AI is not understood as a legal person in the world yet, right? They are still making legislation for AI, so there are problems. For example, if you have a self-driving car, so obviously nowadays autonomous levels are autonomous level 2 and autonomous level 3, right? So you still have to have the finger on the steering wheel for like every 10 minutes or so, right? So if the self-driving car accelerates uncontrollably down the road, right, every manual override fails, right, and crashes and kills people, who is liable? So the person who is driving might say, I could not control, I always brake and try to take control, the car didn't control. And the car company would say that guy would have overridden and therefore would have taken control of the car. So now who is liable? So these kind of problems are going to come up in the future for you guys, right? So there is a lot of discussion on this AI business, especially deepfakes comes under this, right? So how are you going to handle that? And how are you going to collect data? So those kind of things are interesting things. Some of them might not be here. I just took the bot example because bots are primarily AI, right? But if you consider that, who is liable? So have you seen that keep calm t-shirt where AI created. No? Let me show you that. So this is a bot. What is the bot doing? Bot takes the people's words from the internet, right? And then keep calm and drink tea again. So he takes the two most popular words from the internet, puts it in a shirt and sells it. That's the idea of the keep calm bot. But the problem is there is no one monitoring this. So what happened is basically the bot took the words, printed the shirt and put it in the Amazon website, right? So only the people would see what actually the bot is doing. There is no quality control. So let me show you what this shirt looks like. So there are few examples here, right? Okay, so this shirt, so this is a thing I did for law faculty, this kind of things, right? So these shirts you can see is published on the Amazon's website, right? So how do they come up with these words? These are the words that people use in the internet. So bot trains from the internet, bot thinks these are the more popular words and will be trendy. He puts those words, these pictures are just images and they just put those words. So if a person wants to buy, once you click buy only, they will produce this shirt. So person do not necessarily, company do not necessarily know these things are there. So these kind of things we might find it to be funny some people, but this is not, right? This is very bad. And for specifically a person who has been a victim of any of these things, it's extremely offensive, right? So you can see that. So these are things that are going to come in the future. That if this thing comes, how would our jurisdiction work? So that's a good question that you should actually explore. Because these things are going to come in the future. People are going to do unwanted acts, some unwanted cyber hacks, and things like that, and say AI did it. They are going to say that, right? In that sense, how are you going to handle that? So how does this is the top part, the last part filled in by the bot, right? So now you would see that the question I am asking is, who should be held accountable? The company, the bot, or the person who buys it? Who is accountable? Is the company accountable? Company would say that guy had some data. So there are a lot of unknown questions here, right? And now let's assume you go for some social engineering thing, like by clicking a link. So someone might say, I went through this particular site to do a thing and it gave me a legit link. that legit link was laced with something else which created some other problem. So, and they will claim it's AI. So in this particular case, how would you do something like this? So these kind of things you guys know, right? You have seen this video. Real and fake. This is the real video. This is the fake video by the Russians, and you can see these kind of things are there. So now I can take any one of your face. You can take my face and create a nice video, right? So if you pay the money, deepfakes are there for you to create those kind of things. So this one, you have seen the Tesla run, right? I don't know whether the AI video or whatever, but there's a Tesla run video where car goes uncontrollably fast. I don't know whether this is real or not, but I think more towards it's AI, but this is a thing that can actually happen. So if you look at this is the thing that can happen. So if you look at that car, so there is a Tesla. So I don't know whether the legitimacy of this video, but this came sometime in 2022 before deepfakes were that good, right? So I think there's some legitimate truth to this. I do not know whether it's actually true, but these are the kind of things that can actually happen now, right? So more we go in the autonomous hierarchy, right? We can actually have this problem. And now who can I blame this for? So okay, back to this. Alright. So that is all that you need to know with the online safety bill from 12 to 22, right? So 23 is something else. These are measures which I am not going to talk about. And then lastly, section 52, what each of these things mean. So if you have problems defining what these things are, always look at 52. And then if it is not there in 52, then you look at places where this term has been interpreted, or any other cases where this term has been interpreted. So these are the things that I would like you to read and get to know what these terms mean. Okay, so that is all I want to discuss. Your next assignment, as I told you, will be a comparison between GDPR and PDPA, right? Is basically 2 to 3 page document, a write-up, right? Submittable 1 week after your last exam, right? So you will find out GDPR and PDPA is extremely common. What I want is a comparison. So you might also say a comparison and say GDPR has this, would have been better if we had this, and we have this, would have been better if GDPR had this. So both sides are there. I want to look at that and come up with that. Maximum 3 pages of complete writing. That's all, right? So 3 pages does not include your cover page. The cover page, 3 pages, right? The table of content, the number, the page number. Okay, so now we'll look at how the exam is about, right? So there are 4 questions, right? So first question, will be Computer Crimes Act. So I took the longest time in this. I explained in very much detail what this act is about, what are the offences. So the questions will be mostly scenario based, right? So there will be a question. Ideally the question will be, there will be one scenario to read and there will be two questions from that. So the first question will be Computer Crimes Act and the second question will be basically from Electronic Transaction Act, including amendment, right? So this would be a scenario question. So the thing is, scenario would be given. I would request you to answer the question on the aspect of computer crime in one set and aspect of EPA in the other thing. Why I would do one scenario is because otherwise you will have to take a long time to read the scenarios, right? It's not easy to read two scenarios, right? So that is this. All the questions are for 25 marks, right? So then the third question, right? Third question would be a scenario based question where I will be also looking at evidence 5, 6 and 7, right? So evidence ordinance, five, 6 and 7. So these are the three sections I am interested in, not anything else. You can print all of these things and take, right? So, and also the special provision, only thing that you need to know is tampered videos and then 45 days, right? You do not need to take this to the exam. So this you need for the exam, this you need for the exam both, and this. Only these, only the page which has 5, 6 and 7, right? You don't need the entire evidence ordinance, right? And question 4 would be a mix, right? Would be a mix of 1, 2 and 3 in relation to this, right? Online Safety Act, right? So would be a mix of computer crimes, electronic transactions and evidence relating to the Online Safety Act. So the sections you need in Online Safety Act is 2, 12 to 22 and 52, right? So you can print these pages and go, otherwise you have to print 60 pages, that's too much, right? So these two you need the full acts. These are not very big documents. You need the full acts for Computer Crimes Act and the EPA and its amendment. Evidence, 1 page. Special provision you don't need to, but if you really want to take it, you take it, right? Again, there's about 5 pages of that, right? So you can take the full thing as well. So I'll let you take that as well, easier, right? So then, are we okay with this? Any questions? Alright. So then how do you answer the question? So I discussed in one class how to do this. I'll just quickly recap on how are we going to do this. So let's assume you have a scenario question. So scenario questions are the ones that you have to answer like this. Other questions you can generally answer normal essay form, right? So scenario question, when we come from sciences, the biggest problem we are having in sciences is we would say 2 plus 2 is 4. We are attuned to writing very simple single line answers. But in law, we don't do that. Why? We need to set up the case, set up the law, set up the application and set up the conclusion. Right? So in that case, the first thing you have to do is talk about what is the issue. So this is what we call framing. So when you are given a scenario, you tell what is the issue in this scenario. Whether it's unauthorized access, sending propaganda. So that is what we discuss in scenario. You can go to that scenario and discuss very much in detail that scenario, right? And then What is this? You can write them 1, 2, 3, 4, right? But when you write them 1, 2, 3, 4, I don't want you to write proper law essays, but I want it to be a proper answer, right? You can write them in 1, 2, 3, 4. If you do write them in 1, 2, 3, 4, you have to say, you just can't say unauthorized access. You have to say access of A to the computer system B, which he does not have a right to, is a unauthorized access issue, right? Then you have to detail the issue. Why do you have to detail the issue? Because you have to have a proper issue to apply the proper law, right? So then, the second one, what are your rules, right? So, if it is about unauthorized access, where do we have unauthorized access? Computer Crimes Act. So, we would say Computer Crimes Act section 4 and 5 handles unauthorized access and effects of unauthorized access, right? So, that is the rules. These are the statutes. So, now rules is one thing, what is the issue is another thing. So, rule says this is unauthorized access, this is what has actually happened. So, then what is the next thing? You have to apply the rule to the scenario and say the rule applies. Is the idea clear? So, section 3, apply the rule to 1. So, let's say person X put a virus and broke into the computer system. That is the issue. Unauthorized access is basically there in Computer Crimes Act. So now you can look at that section and the wording and says this person has, according to that section 4, says a person commits the offense of unauthorized access if he does something blah blah blah, right? And in that blah 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 you just say find that elements that is defined in that section is already there, right? And therefore offense of unauthorized access applies to scenario 1. You have to go through and do 2, 3 and 4 the same way. It can be the same act, it can be some other act. But I only want you to focus on these things because most of the offenses that we will see will have other acts applicability as well. And then finally for your conclusion. Conclusion in cybercrime, it's criminal. So that means what? Beyond a reasonable doubt, right? So you have to very clearly say, very clearly whether this offence has been committed according to this act. Your conclusion based on application of the rule, what do you think this is? Is that idea clear? Find what are the issues, then rules that can apply to the issues, apply the rules to the issues, and after that you conclude based on the application what is the final outcome. Are we clear? Okay. So these are the things that we would need to do. And then I also discussed few things, right? Before we do any evidence gathering, I said there is a very important thing that we have to look at. We have to look at what we call the causation chain, right? So I talked about two concepts of this, what we call mens rea and actus reus. Guilty mind and the guilty action. So this is what I discussed in the second lecture, I guess, right? So once I do, I also told about causation links. So if A did something, if I can go through this and eventually get to the place, that means the causation is established. If one of these breaks, A is no longer liable for X because I can't prove the causation. So in the first 3 lectures I did these 3 parts. You need to know these 3. So I will necessarily question theory parts on that, right? Causation, not theory. Is there any causation? You should know before you apply this, right? What is the issue? Person did this, gave this rupees 500 rupees, and then asked him to open the door, and then that person came through, logged into the system, causation. If I don't know that how that person got in, I can't attribute it to that person. Is the idea clear? So that is what causation is. And lastly, about contracts. I told what a contract is, right? And I also told you what is invitation to treaties, right? I told you the main difference, right? So that comes under EPA. Right? So these are the things you should know in addition to this set, right? So these are fundamental elements, right? Everyone needs to know this before you start anything on that. So you need to know the two constitutional elements of a crime, constituent elements of a crime. You need to have a guilty mind and the action, causation links, and then for EPA, what is a contract, what is an invitation to treat, and then given a scenario, you should go through these four processes to answer a question, right? Okay, so anything that you need to clarify? This is an open book test. Open in the sense you can basically take these acts with you, right? Nothing written. Please remember, if you take written stuff, you will be asked to keep them outside the exam hall before the exam. If we catch them after the exam, that will be an exam offense, right? You have to remember that. Amendment highlight කරගෙන පුළුවන්ද කියන එක. Highlight කරගෙන but ලියන්න බෑ. Right? සිංහල එක ප්‍රශ්නයක්. සිංහලයි දෙමළයි ප්‍රශ්නයක් නෑ. No problems. අරගෙන but nothing to be written or typed, right? Only highlighting, right? Anything written or typed other than the basic act is considered non-authorized. Are we clear? Alright. So amendment highlighting is important because there are two parts to that. So any other questions? Anything else? It's a 2-hour paper, 25 marks each. So the assignment, as I told you, the second assignment is primarily to make sure that, because you all did not go through those four, because you all did not know those four. That is fair enough. So, however, in order to mitigate that, I have given you another assignment. You have about more than 1 month to submit that, right? So that is why I did not discuss PDPA. So read PDPA and PDPR and do the comparison, right? Okay, any questions?